In Boston, while Americans were celebrating Green World's Day, 32 civilians within a 10-block radius suddenly dropped dead at the same time, causing panic all over the place. All the casualties died while performing their day-to-day activities. This called for immediate action from the government. Dr. Joshua Keyes, a geophysicist professor specializing in geomagnetism, who was in the middle of teaching geophysics at Chicago University, is escorted to an undisclosed facility where he meets his friend Dr. Serge Levesque. This scientist specializes in high-energy weapons. Together, they go into a room full of the bagged bodies of the 32 civilians. They are briefed about the situation by Lieutenant General Thomas, who also asks them what the subjects have in common. Joshua quickly solves the puzzle and tells them all of them have pacemakers. The people died because of an electronic interference, which caused the failure of their pacemakers. Then, Joshua quickly deduces the general's real intentions and tells him there are no weapons that could cause such an attack. The general is relieved to hear this news and immediately walks out after telling them this is why they are needed. But Josh felt there was more to the story. Meanwhile, out in space, a group of NASA astronauts led by Commander Robert Iverson and the brilliant Major Rebecca Childs are entering the Earth's atmosphere. Iverson is the pilot, while Rebecca is in charge of navigation. After making entry, they discover that they are way off course and are about to crash into downtown Los Angeles. Rebecca makes a quick calculation and finds an alternate landing site. After confirming the coordinates with the main station, the crew makes a bumpy but successful landing. After seeing news about another incident in London, where many birds were crashing into buildings and cars in a frenzy, Joshua has a suspicion that something is wrong with the magnetic field of the Earth. He asks his students to design a computer model of an electromagnetic field and begins his study by analyzing it with different incidents like the recent ones that have occurred in the past 2 years. After he gets the results, he presents them to Dr. Konrad Zimski, a highly decorated and famous scientist with ties to White House officials. Dr. Zimski didn't want to speak with Joshua at first, but Joshua insisted on seeing it and Zimski took a look. After spending some hours analyzing it, he comes to terms with the inevitable reality. Earth is about to be destroyed. He calls General Thomas, who is addressing Rebecca about the incident in Los Angeles, and informs him about the situation. In the meantime, the sky shows a phenomenon like aurora borealis, which indicates Earth's magnetic field colliding with Earth's upper atmosphere, while Joshua and Sergei are having a drink at a local bar and talking sarcastically about Joshua's meeting with Zimski. They are suddenly interrupted by armed agents who come to escort Joshua to a highly classified meeting where high-ranking officials are present along with Zimski, who gives Joshua the chance to explain what is happening. Joshua informs the panel that Earth's core has stopped rotating, which is causing the electromagnetic field to fall apart, which in turn will create superstorms with hundreds of lightning per square meter. And when the electromagnetic field completely collapses, the Earth will be fully exposed to solar radiation that will destroy everything on the Earth. Earth has only 1 year left before the field collapses completely. After Joshua's explanation, General Thomas asks them how to fix this problem. Joshua tells them it's impossible, but Zimski thinks he may have a solution. General Thomas, Sergei, Joshua, and Zimski fly to a desert in Utah where they meet Dr. Ed Brazelton, a former colleague of Zimski, who accuses him of stealing his research 20 years ago. Zimski asks him about his famous ship, which was in the very early stages of development, and Ed reveals his famous creation, a device that can drill through rocks by combining high-frequency pulse lasers and resonance tube ultrasonics. He gives them an eccentric demonstration by drilling through a huge rock. Then when asked about the body of the ship, he gave them another demonstration by using a material he called unobtainium, which was not destroyed when he was exposed to a laser drill. Both his demonstration impresses everyone, and General Thomas gives him the task of building the ship in 3 months, which makes Ed laugh, thinking it was a joke. Next, the FBI hunts down a convicted hacker named Theodore Donald Finch, who is caught yet again doing illegal hacks. They give him a deal in exchange for jail, They ask him to control the flow of information on the internet, and he agrees. At a military court, Rebecca is cleared of any wrongdoings of the Los Angeles incident, while being praised for her excellent navigational skills. Then, she gets assigned to the special mission along with Commander Iverson. They get transported to a classified location where they meet the members of the crew: Joshua, Ed, Sergei, and Zimke. Joshua explains the details of the mission to the Corps. The first part of the mission is to reach the Corps using Ed's ship, which he later calls Virgil. It is going to be powered by a small nuclear reactor and will have 6 compartments like train cars. Once they reach the Corps, an explosive charge will be delivered to restart the Corps. Zimsky will be in charge of calculating the scale of explosion needed, while Sergei will design the nuclear warheads that will be used to set the charge. Donald, on the other hand, has prepared a virus that will wipe out files containing any keyword about the mission. He makes sure that nothing gets leaked to the public. In the next months, Virgil gets fitted with all the necessary technology, and the crew practices multiple times using a simulator one time. While Rebecca is practicing on the simulator, Commander Iverson gives her a valuable lesson about being the guy who makes the tough calls. He tells her she couldn't become a leader until she lost, a lesson that will come in handy later. Although everything slowly comes together for the crew, Earth gets into her next stages of destruction. A lightning superstorm begins to hit around the world, but Rome gets hit the worst and receives the largest lightning attack in history and gets destroyed. This prompts the crew to accelerate their plan, and General Thomas gives an order to get the ship in the ground immediately. Virgil is launched through the Marianas Trench and makes its way through the crust. Their signal appears in the main control room on the surface, and their systems check shows very positive signals. Zimsky gives the estimated times it would take to reach the mantle and then the core. It will take 15 minutes to get through the crust and into the mantle. Then 24 hours to pass through the mantle, and another 15 hours to reach the inner core-outer core border. After the 15 minutes are up, the crew safely passes into the mantle. The journey is a historical moment for Zimsky, who keeps recording their journey. After 17 hours since the start of their journey, they encounter a purple color on the navigation screen, which Josh interprets as a space. This meant Virgil was going too fast and could hit anything at high speed. The crew quickly fasten their seatbelt, and Virgil is seen falling at very high speed. Then it goes through a bunch of crystal-like structures, and the crew experiences some serious bumps. At last, Virgil stops after the front drilling laser is damaged, when one of the crystals gets logged in it. After making sure everyone is alright, Commander Iverson talks to the team about how to solve this problem. Ed and Josh tell everyone the only way to fix it is to go outside, which means going through the rear part of the ship at 5,000 degrees. Left with no option, they decide to use the liquid nitrogen from the cooling system. All of the crew, except Rebecca, get out of the ship wearing protective suits and discover the crystals. While Ed cuts the crystal, molten lava begins to pour through the crystals, and it is almost reaching Virgil. To make matters worse, Ed's cutter runs out of oxygen while it just started cutting. Then, Josh makes a brave decision, taking his suit's oxygen and plugging it into the cutter. By the time Ed finishes cutting the crystal, Josh can't hold his breath and collapses. The crew quickly picked him up and took him inside. Rebecca checks the lasers and they start working again. When all seems good, a tragedy strikes. Commander Iverson gets killed by a falling shard. Rebecca, who is still in shock, has to be the leader now. She takes the captain's seat, and after the crew returns safely inside, she makes sure Virgil continues its descent. After being unconscious for some hours, Joshua wakes up, and the crew tells him about losing Commander Iverson. They leave to tend to the ship after admiring his sacrifice. Further down, Virgil passes through enormous diamond formations, and one of them breaches through the last compartment, containing detonation timers for the nuclear charges. This triggers the ship's protocol to close the door and eject the hull. Serge makes a sacrifice and makes sure the team has the charges and the launch codes before being crushed with the compartment. Rebecca had to make a hard call, as a very emotional Joshua kept asking her to open the doors, which would risk the entire hull. Joshua falls apart after seeing Serge's demise and blames Rebecca. This was the price of being a leader. The crew ultimately reaches the core, and they inform the command center on the surface. They were ready to go according to the plan, but there was one problem. The Earth's core was much denser than they thought, which means according to their calculations, the explosion would not be enough. After hearing this report, General Thomas orders them to abort their mission and come back as he plans to use a secondary protocol called Project Destiny, Deep Earth Seismic Trigger Initiative. Back in the core, Zimski explains about Destiny, a tectonic weapon that the United States built in fear of someone else possessing it. After hearing Zimski, the designer of Project Destiny, Joshua figured out that the testing of Destiny was the reason the Earth's core stopped moving. He asks the general to give them some time to come up with a solution, but the general decides to proceed with the second plan. Ed agrees with Joshua, and Rebecca informs the final decision of the group to the general. This makes Zimski act out of control, forcing Ed to knock him out. Meanwhile, Earth has entered the final stage of its destruction. The ultraviolet rays have found an opening, and everything starts to burn up. The Golden Gate Bridge melts down and gets destroyed. This event caused the immediate decision to begin the deployment of Destiny. Joshua, who thinks this weapon will further destabilize the core, asks Finch to delay it. Finch secretly hacks into the facility of the project and diverts the power from Destiny, preventing the general from activating the project. Back on Virgil, the crew, with the help of Zimski, who is now conscious, has devised a plan to plant the explosives in each compartment and eject them, timing their detonation in exact sequence to trigger the core's rotation through constructive wave interference. However, the mechanical override that permits the ejection of the hulls was located at the extremely hot section of Virgil. This was a one-way ticket, and Ed, determined not to let his ship fail, takes on the task after drawing a straw with Zimski and Josh. His sacrifice pays off, and Josh starts planting the bombs with Zimski, while Rebecca ejects it remotely. The crew has almost completed the task, but while setting the charges, Zimski and Josh discover that the size of the last bomb was not enough. Zimski became trapped when the explosive was knocked on his leg. He tells Josh to leave him and lets him know the only way to compensate for the size of the bomb is to use Virgil's nuclear power source. Josh does what Zimski tells him, but Virgil is left with no fuel. The explosives detonate successfully and the core restarts its rotation. As Joshua was waiting with Rebecca for their demise, he suddenly remembered that Virgil's body can convert heat and pressure in the core to energy. He wires the system and they ride the pressure wave out of the core. After some impressive piloting from Rebecca, they reach the ocean floor, where they are discovered by the government with the help of Finch. In the meantime, Rebecca and Joshua speak about their plans for the future until their rescue arrives. The movie ends with Finch leaking classified information about Virgil and Destiny 1 week later, causing the world to recognize Virgil's crew members as heroes and condone Destiny's perpetrators.